Good afternoon. We're once again breaking into the usual ITV schedules to bring you further coverage of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. A distraught royal family and a disbelieving nation have spent the day coming to terms with the news that has shocked the whole world. The Princess was killed in a car crash in Paris just before midnight last night, and she died under the same spotlight in which she'd lived most of her life. She was fleeing with her friend Al-Fayed from press photographers on motorbikes when their car careered out of control in a tunnel alongside the River Seine. Surgeons fought for 2 hours to try to stem her internal bleeding, but they failed and declared her dead at 3 o'clock this morning British time. Al-Fayed died at the scene of the crash, as did their driver. Prince Charles has recently left for Paris to collect Diana's body and accompany it back to Britain. In the coming hours, we'll continue to look back at Diana's remarkable life and hear the stories of those whose lives she touched. With me throughout in the studio will be ITN's royal correspondent, Nicholas Owen, and we also have reporters at Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace here in London, at Balmoral, where the rest of the royal family is coming to terms with the news, and of course in Paris itself. And from there, Paul Davis reports on the day's shocking events.
Why it happened, how it happened. So many questions remain unanswered. But this was the barely recognisable Mercedes limousine in which the Princess of Wales and her companion Al-Fayed were being driven back to his house. Witnesses have said the car was being pursued by photographers riding motorcycles. What is certain is that as he entered this tunnel alongside the River Seine, the driver lost control. The car span, overturned and hit a pillar. Al-Fayed died instantly in the back seat. The driver was also killed. The princess, who'd been sitting alongside Al-Fayed, suffered terrible chest injuries. At first, ambulance crews managed to keep her alive, but her heart had stopped beating by the time she was admitted to hospital. For 2 hours, surgeons fought to restart her heart. At 4 a.m. Paris time, they admitted defeat. Britain's ambassador had been at her bedside.
The death of the Princess of Wales fills us all with deep shock and with deep grief. And our thoughts and our prayers are with her family and her friends.
Near the scene of the accident, French police officers examined motorcycles allegedly used by photographers to chase the princess's car. The men who'd been riding them are still being held for questioning. The princess and Al-Fayed had dined at the Ritz Hotel, owned by the Al-Fayed family. This was the route their driver took to escape the photographer's attention. As the road enters the tunnel, there's a sharp bend and a dip. This is where he lost control.
The car was just travelling at such speed, and it was almost as if it was in too high a gear. It really, really was tearing away. I don't know, maybe it was doing at least 80, maybe 100 miles an hour.
This morning, with the underpass reopened to traffic, police were still trying to piece together the last moments of what had been a romantic holiday for the princess and her friend. At the Salpêtrière hospital, hundreds of ordinary people have been leaving flowers in memory of the princess.
Oh, Diana, why?
This distraught woman said the Princess of Wales had been her heroine ever since the day they'd met while she was on an exchange trip working at a charity in South London. The police say that charges will be brought against 4 men over the events that led up to last night's accident. They're treating the 3 deaths as possible manslaughter. Paul Davis, ITN, Paris.
Well, for the very latest, let's go live now to Paris and our reporter there, Robert Hall. Robert, the police investigation, of course, is ongoing. Any more details emerging?
Well, Dermot, we know that initially the police were holding 7 photographers, 6 of them French, 1 Macedonian. There were rumours before lunch that all had been charged with a charge possibly relating to manslaughter. That hasn't been confirmed. I've heard in the last few minutes that 3 of those photographers have been released, but as you heard Paul Davis say just now, 4 are being held and may yet be charged.
And Robert, any idea when Prince Charles is expected to arrive there?
Yes, we've been getting details in the last few minutes. I don't know whether you can see behind me, there's been an increased police presence over the last half hour or so as the authorities here prepare for Prince Charles to arrive. We understand he'll be here at about 5 o'clock local time. He'll arrive by car under escort at the hospital. He'll be with Diana's 2 sisters. There'll be a brief meeting with President Chirac and also with hospital staff. Remember, they tried so hard to revive the princess for 2 hours during the early hours of this morning. The party are expected to leave the hospital and return to RAF Northolt, just outside London, later this evening.
Robert Hall in Paris, thank you very much indeed. Well, the death of the Princess has provoked a widespread outpouring of grief amongst the ordinary people who'd taken her to their hearts. The Prime Minister, Tony Blair, said he was devastated at the news that such a wonderful, warm and compassionate person had been lost. But there was anger too, particularly at the photographers who'd been following her. Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, said he always believed the press would kill her in the end. Here's Andrew Simmons.
The Union flag at half-mast across a nation numbed by shock with an immense sense of loss. At first, unable to absorb the suddenness of this tragedy, many people were then unsure how to express themselves. Well before most of Britain had woken up, there were sombre gatherings at Buckingham Palace. Many couldn't find any words to say. There were spontaneous acts of sorrow. And some were overcome with sadness. It was the Prime Minister who tried to sum up the mood of a nation.
I feel like everyone else in this country today, utterly devastated. Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her two sons, the two boys.
She was a unique figure. She was a very lively and attractive individual, but also she was a unique public figure. And I think we should all recognise this morning that she did a great deal of good. We should pay tribute to the tremendous work that she did.
One of the first messages from the Church of England came from the former Archbishop of Canterbury.
Cherish Diana's memory as a very rare human being and a recognition that the world is poorer without.
Princess Diana's former press secretary was one of the first to hear of the tragedy.
I don't think I could believe it. When I went to bed, I knew there'd been an accident and that she was ill. And I think it's unbelievable. And I feel very sad for her family.
Floral tributes streamed into Kensington Palace, London home of the Princess.
Just devastated. I mean, we're the general public. I'm just, you know, it's just heartbreaking how her kids must be feeling right now.
She was a great lady. The world will never be the same without her again.
The headlines on early morning newsstands were read with disbelief.
Just shock, really, yeah. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. It's just pure shock, I think.
She was such a wonderful, warm person, and I think she stood head and shoulders above the rest of the royal family because in the way that she was a real human being. She cared about all the people, and that is why I'm so upset about it.
On this most solemn of Sundays, people from all generations continue to pay their own personal tributes. However small they may seem, together they make an overwhelming show of grief. Andrew Simmons, ITN.
Well, our reporter Tim Ewart is live now at Buckingham Palace. Tim, we've watched the crowds build there over the course of the day. Has the enormity of what has happened really sunk in there yet, though?
Perhaps not with everybody, Dermot, you're right, and there has been an extraordinary build-up of people here today. We've been down here since before dawn, around about 4:30 this morning. We started to talk to people as they began to gather here. Most of them at that time were young people, a lot of them on their way home from parties or from nightclubs. The crowd's been growing all day. There have been hundreds now, I would think possibly even 1,000 bouquets of flowers left in front of the main gate at Buckingham Palace. There's a sense of shock, there's a sense of disbelief, and of course among some people there is a sense of anger that this accident need not have happened. We're still waiting from within Buckingham Palace word of formal arrangements for Diana's funeral, what form that is going to take. I understand that talks have been going on involving the Lord Chamberlain's office and members of the Princess's family. Apart from that, very little has been said. So really, it's just been a day here for people of reflection. I think a lot of people earlier on in the day, tourists particularly, turned up without realising what had happened because the guard was changed in the normal way at 11:30 this morning, and only when sombre music was played was it clear to a lot of people that something had happened.
Tim, that suppressed anger you talk about amongst the crowd, has it manifested itself in any way?
Yes, it has. I mean, there have been isolated incidents, and all of us who've been down here, obviously as reporters or camera people, there has been some aggression from some people who've gathered here. There was a television crew much earlier this morning who were mistaken for a French crew and suffered a lot of abuse. But equally, a lot of people have said that they don't blame the press, certainly not the British press, for what happened. But I think it's understandable, given the shock that people are feeling, that they're not terribly happy with what happened in Paris.
Tim, for the time being, thank you very much indeed. Just let me bring you some more news on the sad progress of the Prince of Wales towards Paris. It's reported now that he's arrived at Aberdeen Airport. He arrived at 2:10 to join his ex-wife's sisters aboard a plane bound for Paris to collect the body of the Princess of Wales. Well, now to our political correspondent, Tom Bradby in Downing Street. Tom, what is the Prime Minister doing right now?
Well, we understood earlier that the Prime Minister was likely to be about to depart for Chequers. Downing Street have now said that he is not going to Chequers. He is in fact going direct to Northolt, where he will meet the Prince of Wales later on this evening. There's also, we expect this afternoon later on, an announcement about campaigning for the Scottish referendum on devolution. They're now saying that the campaigning, if you like, is likely to be suspended indefinitely until at least after we know when the funeral is likely to be. There's also some discussion and speculation about the possibility of changing the actual date of the referendum. The difficulty there appears to be that the date is actually in the bill itself, the bill setting up the referendum. So at the moment it's simply a question of the campaigning, and actually changing the date seems rather unlikely.
Tom, I just want to be exactly clear about who actually organises the period of mourning, the lying in state. Is that anything to do with Downing Street, or is that all up to Buckingham Palace?
It's all up to Buckingham Palace. Earlier today, there was a suggestion that Downing Street were going to be involved in the discussions about the period of official mourning and indeed the funeral arrangements themselves. Later on they said that that was certainly not the case, and that it was really a question for Buckingham Palace, and that is where any announcement would come from. They said simply that they were there to give support and advice if needed.
Thanks very much indeed, Tom. We, of course, await any news on that from Buckingham Palace. Well, Diana's death didn't just rob the nation of a princess, it robbed her two young sons of a mother. The Princes William and Harry were told of her death this morning by their father, Prince Charles, at Balmoral. Princess Diana had never made any secret of the fact that her relationship with them was the most important thing in her life. It was, she said recently, what kept her in Britain. Harry Smith reports.
The two princes, seen here at Balmoral 2 weeks ago, are said to be very different characters who will handle their grief in very different ways. The elder of the two, William, is often described as reserved and sensitive. In public, he usually shows a dislike for the sort of media attention his mother had to learn to cope with. At school at Eton, where he's been studying for his GCSEs, he's said to have blended in well and enjoys being treated as just another one of the boys. His school and the friendships he's formed there could be a source of strong support as he tries to come to terms with his loss. His younger brother Harry is more outgoing, a characteristic his mother is said to have greatly admired. He's a keen sportsman and displays a remarkable degree of self-confidence in public, rarely troubled by the presence of the cameras and often eager to play up to them. Diana, always the picture of the devoted mother, said recently she would have left Britain if it hadn't been for her sons. Now they, who were always going to have difficult childhoods, must face some of the most difficult years of growing up without their mother. Harry Smith, ITN.
Well, our royal correspondent Nicholas Owen is here with me now. Nicholas, you were present at many of the events that Harry Smith was reporting on there.
Yes.
It goes without saying, a terrible blow for the young princes.
Yes, an awful blow for them. I mean, all of our thoughts must be initially with those two boys. That the pictures you saw of them at Balmoral, that was rather an unusual occasion, and only a fortnight ago. In order to deter paparazzi from crawling around Balmoral, the Prince of Wales agreed to allow photographers and TV crews and so on to see him and his sons briefly beginning their holiday, and there they were, and it was very evident there that, you know, the Prince of Wales doesn't enjoy it, but certainly Prince William, strapping lad that he is now, over 6 foot tall, 15 years old, he absolutely hates that business of facing the cameras, even though this was all arranged. So there's a terrific problem. Royal officials, Buckingham Palace, are already terribly concerned, have been for, well, several years, I have to say, about William and his handling of the public stage. And what has happened to his mother, of course, is going to make all that sort of thing so much more difficult for everybody concerned.
But as you describe that deal that Prince Charles did with the press, I'll give you the photograph and then leave us alone for the rest of the holiday. It was the kind of deal that Princess Diana wasn't able to do.
No.
She was just too irresistible.
No, absolutely a deal she could never really make. She did try on one or two occasions. You know, there was this business of her coming along up to a boat full of pressmen and sort of saying, you know, what are you doing here and all this sort of thing.
That was on the recent holiday.
That's right, that's right. And she tried to sort of talk. It wasn't clear whether she was trying to do a deal or what, really. But now here's another picture of her at her... This was on her 36th birthday, at a function at the Tate Gallery. I remember it very well. I was there. And didn't she look super as usual, and everybody crowding round her, her magnetism. I mean, those are posh people, we would say, wouldn't we, in a London art gallery. But it was the same with whatever group of people she was with, whether she was abroad on her landmine missions, or seeing children in hospitals here, or whatever, or indeed at these swanky London parties. The way that woman had of commanding attention, she was a superstar in every sense of the word. So, going back to what you were saying, no, the paparazzi were never going to leave her alone, unfortunately, with the tragic, shattering results we have now had.
What now for royal relations with the press?
Well, I think really it's what now for relations between the rest of the world and the press, frankly, because I think everybody who doesn't actually earn a living from the media is going to be questioning what the devil has been going on, and probably agreeing with Earl Spencer, or thinking they agree with Earl Spencer when he talked about the press driving Diana to her death. I suppose there will be a big storm of people saying, well, we need new privacy laws, but the problem is we're dealing with different countries. This happened in France. There are different privacy laws. There are different privacy laws in America. You know, how are you going to get a lid on this? And the point is this. It's been said many times, hasn't it? People buy newspapers and magazines when there are pictures of the princess. When newspapers run photographs of the princess with Dodi Fayed on her holiday, pictures of them kissing, apparently, sales of those newspapers absolutely leapt. So, you know, everybody's involved in this a bit. All those of us who have a fascination, and I have hardly ever met anybody who didn't have a fascination with the royal family, no matter what they may say when you first meet them.
Yes, well, wherever you go in the world, you say from British television, and they say, what's going on with Charles and Diana?
Well, they only ever really ask you two questions, you know. The second question is, have you ever met the Queen? And the first question was, have you ever met Diana? What's she really like?
Nicholas, just to interrupt you there, I believe we have some pictures of Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, leaving Aberdeen Airport now in a jet from the Royal Flight, heading for Paris.
Yes, he's on his way, as we say, with the Princess's two sisters to collect the body of Diana, Princess of Wales, bring it back to this country, and the feeling being that she will be...
And that journey take, what, just over an hour, I suppose?
Yes, a little bit. Well, no, a little bit longer than that, I think. Isn't he going... Didn't we hear that Mr Blair will be meeting the Prince at Northwood? I think that's what our correspondent, Tom Bradby in Downing Street, was saying. But, you know, we'll be monitoring events, obviously, as the day unfolds.
OK, Nick, thanks a lot. Well, as we were discussing earlier, Princess Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, reacted with grief and anger to the news of his sister's death. This is what he had to say.
All those who've come into contact with Diana, particularly over the past 17 years, will share my family's grief. She was unique. She understood the most precious needs of human beings, particularly those that suffered. And her vibrancy and sparkle, combined with a very real sense of duty, are now gone forever. It is heartbreaking to lose such a human being, especially when she was only 36. This is not a time for recriminations, but for sadness. However, I would say that I always believed the press would kill her in the end. But not even I could imagine that they would take such a direct hand in her death, as seems to be the case. It would appear that every proprietor and editor of every publication that has paid for intrusive and exploitative photographs of her, encouraging greedy and ruthless individuals to risk everything in pursuit of Diana's image, has blood on his hands today. My heart goes out to the families of the others killed in this incident. Above all, my thoughts are with William and Harry, and with my mother and two sisters, who are showing tremendous bravery in the face of senseless tragedy. I would ask you please, at this time, to respect the fact that Diana was part of a family, and amongst the general mourning at her death, realise that we too need space to pay our final respects to our own flesh and blood. For that, we will need privacy. Finally, the one consolation is that Diana is now in a place where no human being can ever touch her again. I pray that she rests in peace. Thank you.
Well, let's examine the princess's relations with the press in a bit more detail. As we reported earlier, French police said that Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed were being pursued by press photographers on motorbikes when their car careered out of control. 7 of those photographers were later detained for questioning. 4 are still being held by police. It was the kind of hounding she'd been forced to get used to, but had often resented, not least in recent weeks, as her friendship with Dodi Fayed flourished. Jennifer Nadel now examines the princess's relationship with the press and looks at what repercussions their apparent role in her death will have.
For the last 17 years, the princess's every move has been tracked and recorded by the press. Whether trying to take her sons on a family holiday or simply work out in her London gym, photographers and editors alike knew her face, and the fairy tale that went with it would sell. Photos taken on her recent trip to Saint-Tropez were sold for hundreds of thousands of pounds, boosting tabloid sales and profits. Now her pursuers stand accused.
Mr. Al-Fayed believes that this appalling tragedy would never have happened but for the attentions of these people who I suppose we shall have to call photographers. It was quite appalling what happened, and we're just coming to terms with that.
Tougher laws which could have afforded the princess greater protection were recently rejected. Until now, the government has favoured self-regulation, a position that may change.
I think there has been concern in Britain, in the press and the media, that there should be a line drawn, and that it should be drawn by a responsible press and by responsible media, rather than having it drawn for them by others, with the development of a stronger press complaint system. And I'm certain that that is the right way to go. The paparazzi clearly wouldn't have been pursuing her were it not for the fact that the photographs that of her that they took earned so much money for them.
Editors also think legislation wouldn't have helped.
France has very stringent privacy laws. They were completely ineffective, both at Saint-Tropez and clearly in Paris. The story about the Prince of Wales, the story about the breakup of the royal marriage, was a worldwide story. It had huge market potential in every country in the world. Even if you banned it in one country, the market would still be sufficiently great to ensure that the harassment continued.
But at Buckingham Palace today, some mourners clearly wanted someone to be held accountable.
But why do they pay so much money for the photographs? Why were the paparazzi after them? If there was no money, in the photographs, they wouldn't have been after her in the tunnel.
Whatever the difficulties of legislation, public anger and grief now seem certain to lead to increased pressure for changes to the law. Jennifer Nadel, ITN.
Well, Alan Rusbridger, the editor of The Guardian newspaper, joins me in the studio. Now, Alan Rusbridger, we heard the princess's brother Earl Spencer there saying, "I always believed the press would kill her in the end." Pretty strong words. Do you recognise yourself in that statement?
Well, I hope not The Guardian, obviously, but I think the British press has got to look at itself and wonder whether it did have some responsibility. It's had, I think, an appalling record with Diana and has persecuted her over a number of years. The story is complicated because she clearly connived with the press to a certain extent, but I think it is time that editors search their souls.
Do you think editors who printed the kind of pictures we've seen over recent weeks of the princess used the paparazzi, the kind of paparazzi who were pursuing her in Paris, at arm's length, as it were? They could hold their hands up and say, well, they don't work for us, they're freelancers, we don't employ them, but they still printed the pictures.
There's no doubt that's what goes on. The British press, I think the British press photographers are fairly responsible. But once these photos come on the market, they pay huge sums for them and they kind of pretend that they've got clean hands because they didn't take them themselves.
Do you think Earl Spencer's going too far, though, when he says that editors who paid for these kind of pictures had blood on their hands?
Yeah, that's clearly an exaggeration, understandable in the circumstances. But I think there is an indirect responsibility. If you had Mr. Murdoch who said, I'm sorry, my papers will not in future pay for pictures that they consider intrusive or I consider intrusive, you'd kill that market off overnight. And it'll be interesting to see what Mr. Murdoch's reaction is to this kind of accusation.
Now, you've been talking for some time about a potential privacy law for this country. Do you think that the death of the princess in this manner crystallises that debate?
I think it will hasten it. We're going to get European legislation anyway, which is going to make it more likely. I would like to see it as part of a package with the reform of the defamation laws and freedom of information. But I think It's not good enough for editors in this country to ignore privacy. Privacy is a fundamental human right, acknowledged as such in other countries, and I think it's time that British editors thought about that a bit harder than they do at the moment.
Don't you accept, though, Simon Jenkins' point there made in Jennifer Nadel's report, that the French already have much stricter privacy laws than we have, yet it didn't stop those paparazzi acting in that manner?
I think there is a point that I think no privacy law on earth would have saved this kind of incident. I mean, it was in a public place on a public highway. There may be laws to do with driving that were infringed there, but I can't think of any privacy law in the world that would stop people from taking pictures in a public place like that. But it is up to editors to draw a line between what is legitimate and what is illegitimate.
Is it the case, though, that the Princess was just a tabloid phenomenon? I mean, I've seen plenty of pictures of the Princess of Wales in The Guardian. The broadsheets found her irresistible as well.
I think every paper in the world found her irresistible. The question is who paid for it. It was the first use of these pictures, and I think that's where the blame lies, because these photographers were driven on by an appetite for millions and millions of pounds that were available for the right set of pictures.
But did you, are there pictures that you would not print in The Guardian if that picture that all the paparazzi were looking for over the last few weeks and months of Diana and Dodi together holding hands, who knows what, if that had fallen into your lap, would you have printed it?
Certainly not, no.
Alan Rusbridger, thank you very much indeed. Now we apparently can show you some pictures of the Princess of Wales from yesterday, leaving Sardinia, I'm told, with Dodi Al-Fayed, heading for Paris. There she is with her helpers, unloading something from the back of the boot of that white Mercedes. There, just in the background, you can see the distinctive colours of the Harrods jet, which was at her disposal. She had been on that Harrods yacht with Dodi Al-Fayed. No sign there. I think Nicholas Owen is with me here. Nick, I don't spot Dodi Al-Fayed there.
I don't see Dodi there, no, I don't.
And she skipped up the steps there.
I think that may have been Dodi Al-Fayed going in just after, I have to say. It looked as though it was possibly him, but...
Did you notice the carefree way, though, she skipped up the steps?
Well, yes. There were occasions, as we've been saying during this awful day, there were occasions when she did not resent the presence of photographers, people like that.
There they are.
When she wanted to say to the world, this is the man in my life and I don't mind you seeing it. There were occasions when she was happy for that. A happy chapter in her life was opening and she did want to share it. Let's be clear about that.
There's the plane taxiing.
Yes. As you say, those green and gold colours of Harrods.
Those there, the last pictures we had of the Princess of Wales yesterday. Now we have a quote from the Duchess of York. Duchess of York's office has just said that the Duchess has lost someone she has always considered a sister and a best friend. There are no words strong enough to describe the pain in her heart. The world has lost the most compassionate of humanitarians and someone so special whose presence can never be replaced. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family, in particular Prince William and Prince Harry. That just in from the Duchess of York's office. Well, the Queen and the Prince of Wales were woken in the early hours of the morning at Balmoral with the terrible news of the Princess's death. Determined to cling together, the whole royal family, including the Princes William and Harry, attended a church service there a few hours later. Shortly after, Prince Charles, as we saw a few moments ago, set off for Paris to accompany Diana's body back to Britain. From Balmoral, David Rose reports.
Balmoral Castle, where the dreadful news arrived in the small hours of this morning. Balmoral Castle, where sometime around 4, the heir to the throne had to wake his 2 sons and break the news that their beloved mother was dead. The media and the police started gathering at the entrance to the castle, hardly believing what they'd heard, and then tourists, foreign and British, who came to see the royal family and to pay their respects. Promptly at 11:30, 3 royal black limousines swept quietly across the River Dee from the castle, down the drive. The Queen Mother was in the first car. Prince Charles and Princes William and Harry were in the second. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh in the last. They crossed the main road and drove up the hill, disappearing under the trees to Crathy Church. In the church, the service never mentioned Princess Diana by name, but the minister offered prayers for all those whose lives had been darkened by tragedy and grief. Then, after an hour of worship and prayer, the cars came back from the little church on the hill. The two princes were sitting on either side of their father in the back of the car. Afterwards, the Queen's domestic chaplain spoke about the service.
We prayed for the royal family, as we always do every Sunday, but today especially we prayed for the Prince of Wales and for the children in particular, and asked that God's blessing would be with them, and that they would know his peace, and that they would know not only of God's love but our love.
At about 1, two much smaller black cars drove out of the castle. The Prince of Wales was at the wheel of the first, on his way to Aberdeen Airport, London and Paris. At this moment, the whole royal family, with the exception of Prince Charles, are in Balmoral Castle behind me. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh and the two princes are expected to make their way south later today, but so far we have no details. David Rose, ITN, at Balmoral.
Well, this is an event which has shaken the world like no other I've experienced. Reaction flooding in from all four corners of the globe. ITN's Mark Webster is in our newsroom and he's been monitoring developments.
We know that some 20 minutes ago the Prince of Wales set off for Paris on a BAE 146. The two sisters of Princess of Wales, Jane and Sarah. We know that he'll be landing at a military Air Force base near Paris and then go to the hospital where his ex-wife's body is. He'll then be back in the UK at around 7 o'clock this evening. As far as campaigning over devolution goes, Downing Street spokesman has said, pending an assessment of the situation, campaigning will be suspended for both the devolution referendums for Scotland and for Wales. And on the issue of privacy in the press, Lord Wakeham, the chairman of the Press Complaints Commission, who recently warned that a press privacy law might actually make the situation worse, has actually said today, obviously, he said, well, I feel tremendous distress, sadness and sympathy. It would be unwise for me to say anything more until the full facts are known. I shall be watching the situation, have to think what to do. I don't think that the immediate aftermath is the right moment to make a judgment. That's on a privacy law. But as was said there by Dermot, there have been tributes pouring in from all over the world, from Nelson Mandela, from heads of state and government, and the latest come in from Mother Teresa, who said, Diana helped me to help the poor, and that's the most beautiful thing. She was very much concerned about the poor, and her attitude towards the poor was good. That's why she came close to me. She was a very great friend, in love with the poor. She was like an ordinary housewife. She was a very good mother. Her attitude towards the poor was good. And the Archbishop of Canterbury has also spoken about Princess of Wales' personal qualities. He said she was a vibrant and beautiful woman. He said she seized the imagination of young and old alike. This beautiful woman was also a very vulnerable human being. But out of that vulnerability, he said, and weakness, if you like, came lots of strength, her passion and her commitment to people. So I say one of hundreds of different tributes which has come from all over the world in the wake of Princess of Wales' death.
Mark, thank you very much. Well, let's look in a little bit more detail at that global reaction to the Princess's death. In America, President Clinton led widespread mourning. In America, of course, the Princess was immensely popular and much loved. The President said he was profoundly saddened at the tragic event. From Washington, John Owen reports.
At the British Embassy in Washington today, there is evidence of the great sense of loss being felt across America.
Diana, the Princess of Wales, is dead. She was killed early.
Throughout the night, the television networks here rescheduled programs to report the Paris tragedy. Sophisticated yet possessing the common touch, she charmed the people of this nation. Diana's most recent visit in June was to call for a worldwide ban on landmines. Privately, she met Hillary Clinton, who later admitted that the meeting caused the president to reconsider the landmine issue. Other politicians who met the princess were also impressed by her commitment to humanitarian causes.
I knew her as a very sensitive, at times very amusing lady who desperately wanted to make a difference in this world.
Humanitarian work.
One of the princess's last interviews was with this French journalist who writes for Le Monde. Diana was critical about British press intrusion.
said, really the British press is so hard. Anything I do, I'm criticized. They are always looking for the tiny mistake. And I think that when I come abroad or overseas, it's more simple, and people tend to take me just as I am.
It was that down-to-earth personality that appealed to the many Americans devastated by the princess's death.
It was a great shock. I can't believe that it happened.
Oh, that's bad news. What? I didn't know.
Princess Diana was a frequent visitor to the United States, and her fondness for Americans was reciprocated completely. Britain does not mourn alone. John Irvine, ITN, Washington.
Well, live now to John Irvine in Washington. John, as you were saying in your report, you're a few hours behind us there in Washington. Presumably many Americans still waking up to the kind of shock we in Britain experienced a few hours ago.
Absolutely, Dermot, and they're soon to hear from their president. President Clinton is to make a statement on American television from Martha's Vineyard, where he and his wife Hillary are on holiday. They have already extended their sympathy to Princess Diana's family, her friends, and of course especially to her two sons. When the president makes that address, he will be speaking for a nation that was in love with the princess. People here wanted her to come and live if she chose to leave Britain. She had, of course, had many regal qualities that appealed to the Americans. She was statuesque, she was elegant, she was graceful. But along with that, she had the common touch, she had the ability to empathise with ordinary people. And I think it was that mixture of qualities that endeared her to the American people. You must remember, before Diana here, the royal family was seen as aloof, perhaps even anachronistic. She breathed new life. The American people recognised the work she did for humanitarian causes. She championed the cause of AIDS sufferers. More recently, she appealed for a worldwide ban on landmines. There's never been any suggestion that she was trying to manipulate the media. People here saw Diana as genuine. There were no skeptics in America. People saw her as a person who used power, position and influence to try to do some good in the world.
John, did they feel in the United States that we in Britain just didn't appreciate Diana enough?
I think that is definitely the case. I think they felt sorry for her. When she came over here, they embraced her. There were no critics. That's why she liked it. Perhaps that's why she came here so often. You must remember, the American people are deeply shocked by this. For the last 17 years, they have seen Diana's picture on the front of newspapers, on the front of magazines, on their television screens, week in, week out. They can hardly fathom that never again will they see a fresh image of the world's most photographed woman.
John Irvine in Washington, thank you very much indeed. Just let me bring you up to date on some of the latest developments. We have a report from French police who say they've detained for questioning 7 of the photographers who were following Princess Diana's car early on Sunday when it crashed, killing Diana and her companion Dodi Al-Fayed. Well, the Harrods boss, Mohammed Al-Fayed, said the death of his eldest son and the princess had been an appalling and quite needless tragedy. He pointed the finger of blame for their death directly at the press photographers who'd been pursuing them. He said Dodi had been a kind, gentle and decent person who'd had a tremendous regard for Princess Diana. Kevin Dunn reports.
Heir to the Harrods empire, Dodi Fayed had a reputation as a millionaire playboy who had dated a string of glamorous women. But in recent years he had played an increasingly important part in the running of the Harrods business and was seen by his father as his natural successor. When his friendship with Diana was made public last month, after the princess's holiday aboard Mohammed Al-Fayed's yacht, the media interest in the couple became intense. One of Dodi's former girlfriends, model Kelly Fisher, even surfaced to threaten to sue him for breaking off their alleged engagement. But his friends say his relationship with Diana was deepening.
I knew how sincere he was, and I think that they were enjoying their life together, they're enjoying each other's company, they were getting to know each other, and why not?
Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, and his brother Ali had come from humble beginnings in Egypt to take charge of Britain's most famous store. His position brought him into contact with royalty, and he apparently encouraged his son's friendship with Diana, though Dodi found press attention intrusive.
He wasn't an angry man. He was still in the throes of developing this relationship with Diana, and and that was the main focus. But the press was making it very difficult.
Today, the flag was flying at half-mast over the Harrods store in Knightsbridge as the Al-Fayed family tried to come to terms with their loss. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
Well, Nicholas Owen is with me in the studio now, our royal correspondent. Nicholas, some more information coming in about Charles's movements.
Yes, we saw earlier on, or we reported earlier on, that he'd gone to Aberdeen Airport to fly off to collect the Princess of Wales' body, and we're now getting more details. He's flown with Lady Jane Fellows and Sarah McCorquodale, that's to say the Princess's two sisters, and we now know that the plane will go straight to Paris in a BA 146 aircraft, the Queen's flight. He'll meet President Jacques Chirac when he gets to Paris, and then it will fly back to RAF Northolt in Middlesex, and will be due to arrive back there at 7 o'clock this evening, when the Prime Minister Tony Blair will meet the party. So those details, which were a bit elusive before, we now know the Prince's movements up until for the next 4 hours or so.
OK, Nick, thanks very much. Let's cross now to Kensington Palace. Our reporter there is Helen Wright. Helen, we saw earlier the scenes from Buckingham Palace, the huge crowds, the flowers. I guess a similar situation there.
Very much so, Dermot. All day today, people have been arriving with bouquets of flowers. As you can see, there are hundreds of bouquets here. People still arriving with them. Hundreds of people here just wanting to express their grief. They've just come along just to be here. Within the walls of Kensington Gardens, there are hundreds more people queuing outside the main gates of the palace. You can perhaps hear behind me somebody crying. Many people who've been here today have been in tears, remembering Princess Diana. Many of the floral tributes bear the message, "We'll always remember you, Queen of Hearts."
Helen Wright at Kensington Palace, thank you very much indeed. Well, in a few moments we'll have an in-depth look at Diana's life. But before that, we end this part of our coverage with some of the most memorable images of the Princess of Wales. These are the pictures which brought her to the attention of millions around the world and helped win her a special place in all of their hearts.
Yeah, I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all.
Life is mostly froth and bubble. Two things stand like stone: kindness in another's trouble, courage in your own.
Now we're going to take a longer and more reflective look at the remarkable life of Diana, Princess of Wales. As Carol Barnes reports, Lady Diana Spencer was just 19 when she was thrown onto the public stage with the announcement of her engagement to Prince Charles. It was a stage she graced until her untimely death earlier today.
The Princess of Wales was a new kind of royal. She carried out her duties with elegance and style, just like the other members of the royal family. But there was a difference. She wasn't stuffy, responding to people naturally, and the people took her to their hearts. She was happy to show the kind of human side that other royals kept hidden, giving the monarchy a refreshing new profile throughout the world. But she could be embarrassed by the royal ordeal. In the early days, she was shy Di to the press, a girl who easily blushed. This proved to endear her to millions as she publicly learnt the protocols of royal life. It appeared that she didn't take long to learn. The endless handshakes during hundreds of walkabouts proved no problem to her. She always looked pleased to meet anyone, and the crowds were delighted to meet her. Before the eyes of the world, it seemed that the romantic schoolgirl had flowered into a serene, self-confident princess. But it was a veneer. In private, the princess was not living the fairy tale. Despite the outward appearance of togetherness, there was a darker side to the princess's life. And the world was stunned when Andrew Morton published Diana, Her True Story in 1992. This proved to be the preface to the unthinkable.
Statement to Prime Minister.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that, with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses have no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected.
Before she married Prince Charles, she was Lady Diana Spencer, an anonymous face in London's Bedsitter-land. She was 19 and very shy. She was born Diana Frances Spencer, the daughter of an aristocrat and friend of the royal family. She grew up at Park House on the royal estate at Sandringham. Prince Charles's younger brothers, Andrew and Edward, were frequent visitors to her home. She was sent to Riddlesworth Hall, where the girls were taught good manners.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mrs. Wood. Good morning, Mr. Winter.
Good morning, everyone.
Her time there was marked by initial homesickness, and it also became apparent that Diana was not to excel in the classroom, but she enjoyed sport and was good at it. This proved an unsettling period for the girl away from home, as her parents had decided to divorce, and the resultant fight over custody of the children had a lasting effect on the youngster. Her next school, too, West Heath in Kent, inspired no academic achievements, although she won prizes for her swimming prowess. And here she developed her love of dancing, learning ballet and tap, but any dreams of a professional career evaporated as she grew taller. As Princess of Wales, she made a joke of her school days and her lack of academic success. On a visit to West Heath 10 years later to open a new sports hall named after her former headmistress, she recalled past misdemeanours and the price she had to pay.
My years at West Heath were certainly very happy ones indeed. I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Rudge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. Though you would never have known by my O-level results. I cannot think of a better and more lasting memento to Miss Rudge's years at the school, both as teacher and headmistress, than this magnificent hall. Perhaps now, when future generations are handed out punishments for talking after lights, pillow fights and illegal food, they will be told to run 6 times round this hall. It has to be preferable to the lacrosse pitch or weeding the garden, which I became a great expert at.
During her time at West Heath, her father had succeeded to the Spencer earldom and gone to live at Althorpe Hall in Northamptonshire. He was married again by now to the former Lady Dartmouth. It was during a weekend house party that Prince Charles and Lady Diana took notice of each other for the first time.
It was 1977. Prince Charles came to stay as a friend of my sister Sarah's for a shoot. We sort of met in a ploughed field.
Well, I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was. And, I mean, great fun and bouncy and full of life and everything.
Lady Sarah Spencer was one of a number of suitable young ladies Prince Charles had been photographed with. He was the world's most eligible bachelor, a magnet for admiring and aspiring young women. He had a number of girlfriends. The chances of each of marrying the heir to the throne was avidly discussed in the press. One name mentioned more than most was Princess Astrid of Luxembourg, even though she was a Catholic. Then a new name emerged. Lady Di, the name she would be known by throughout the world, by now shared a flat in Kensington with 3 girlfriends. News of her romance came as a shock to them. She'd said she was going out with Charles Renfrew. Baron of Renfrew is one of Prince Charles's titles. They remember her as a good flatmate.
Generous. Very generous. A very good friend.
Did you watch TV a lot? Did you have any favourite programmes?
Oh, God. Crossroads.
Did you share that like?
Unfortunately, yes.
She adored children and helped with the children at a kindergarten in Pimlico.
I wanted to teach children, and they said, why not come along? So I first started off doing afternoons, and then I took over the mornings and did whole days. But I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after an American baby boy, which nobody seems to realise. It was very special to me.
She's, got pictures of him and always asks about him when she writes.
Oh, she still writes to you?
Yes, which I think is just marvelous of her. I realize how she finds the time to do it is beyond me.
She now faced possibly the most daunting initiation test for would-be members of the royal family, ordeal by the media. Her flat came under siege. She was followed wherever she went. Even under this pressure, she stayed calm, and in doing so, she won respect.
How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you.
Well, it is, naturally.
You're coping with it all right, though? You seem to be doing very well.
Well, I'm still around.
But she regretted allowing this photograph to be taken. It showed her without a slip. She was embarrassed. Charles was said to be delighted by it. The question now was not if she would marry Prince Charles, but when.
Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
I'm not going to say anything, please.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
In February 1981, the waiting was over. Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Charles and Lady Diana were engaged. The ring was a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. The couple looked happy and relaxed, delighted, like everyone else, that a wedding would take place. Earl Spencer and Lady Diana's stepmother celebrated among the crowds outside the palace gates. Inside, Lady Diana was facing up to a future she could hardly have dreamt of.
Yesterday you were a nanny looking after children. Now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales, and one day you would, in all likelihood, be Queen. It's a tremendous change for someone, if I may say, of 19 to make all of a sudden, the transition.
It is, but I've had a small run-up to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
The months between the engagement and the wedding were hectic, often exhilarating, sometimes trying. She had to learn the restrictions of royal life. Never again would she be able to walk quietly down to the shops. Prince Charles had to keep the engagements he'd accepted before the announcement of the engagement, and this meant some separation. Diana had to accept this and do her best to hide her feelings. She also had to master the royal technique of remembering your position and keeping station. All this was very new and strange for her, but she was learning fast. She was a hit with the crowds wherever she went. She especially enjoyed meeting children. She made frequent trips to see her wedding dress being made. Exactly what it would look like became a national obsession. The weeks before the wedding were happy ones. The couple attended many events as wedding fever gripped the nation. The more she attended, the better she coped. Only once did Diana's composure slip. At a polo match, she found the ever-present photographers just too intrusive. She was led away, obviously distressed. She quickly recovered. The couple gave a pre-wedding interview in which Diana recalled the collage which her former pupils had made for her.
I collected it last Friday when I went to the end-of-term party. which I ended up being battered and bruised. And there's so many children crawling on top of me. But they presented me with that and a glass representing young England. It was lovely and really nice.
July the 29th, 1981. Wedding day had arrived at last. In a few hours, St. Paul's Cathedral would become the centre of the world. The revellers were out all night. Today was a national holiday, and they would make the most of it. 750 million people would be watching the ceremony live on television. As dawn came up over London, preparations for the parade were well advanced. Horses were made to get up early. So too were 4,000 policemen who would line the route. They needed to be fed and watered as well. Outside Buckingham Palace and all the way to St. Paul's, the pavements were jammed with well-wishers. And the bands began to play. There were accidents, but in general things went according to plan.